Soul is the mother of funk. It's also been called the grandmother of pop and even rock. Today, however, it's been cross-pollinated with many other subgenres. Soul is a lot of things now. It's a kind of spectrum. Aretha, Ray Charles and Etta James are on one end, let's say, and the likes of Anderson.Paak and SZA are on the other. Lawrence, the band, would have you believe they sit somewhere on that spectrum. The band calls itself soul pop with a bit of funk. Whatever it is, it's certainly polarising. According to the discourse, most of which is happening over on TikTok right now, Lawrence has big lovers and big haters. Naturally, I'm late to the party on this, but here goes. The lovers think this. The lead singer's voice, Gracie, is incredible. The production's really tight. The songs are feel-good and bombastic. Their shtick calls back to the best moments of soul, funk and classic pop. They put on great live shows. All of these things are objectively true. Lawrence are a technically good band that makes technically competent music. So if you don't like them, which many people don't, are you really just a hater? And why would someone hate something like this in the first place?
It insists upon itself, Lois.
Here are the reasons Lawrence rubs people the wrong way. They and their music come across as disingenuous. They're doing the easy thing. Intolerable smugness. They're taking themselves way too seriously. Their style is a kind of soulless facsimile of things that have been done before and better. They're appropriating black culture. They're nepo babies. I want to focus on this point in particular for a second. Society's reflexive distaste for unearned privilege strikes me as interesting, not least because most of the world's best music has been made by rich people. Nepotism is not a reason to dislike an artist outright if the art they make is true. But if your listeners get a single whiff of fakery about you, your wealth or your privilege will be used against you. That's human nature, I guess. In any case, mob resentment is riding pretty high over on TikTok at the moment, and most of that's directed at Lawrence. While few of these viewpoints are objectively true, there's a solid case to be made for most of them. Most people point to the band's so-called acoustic-ish performance of What You Want as a prime exhibit.
Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's just got something to say.
I'm not a hater, but I'm not a fan of Lawrence, and whenever I don't like something, I try and figure out why. Oftentimes it comes down to gut feel, which I concede isn't the best or fairest basis for criticism. One of the thoughts I keep returning to, however, is this. Lawrence are a lot like the funk soul band Vulfpeck.
1, 2, 3.
They employ the same genres, the same sarcastic shtick, the same big instrumental breaks and evolving compositions. They are both products of the social media age. Gracie Lawrence and Vulfpeck contributor Theo Katzman even have similar vocal styles. Very hoarse, big on treble, plenty of falsetto and complex vocal runs. I love Vulfpeck, but I don't love Lawrence, in spite of their superficial similarities. And when I consider why that is, it comes back to the viewpoints of the so-called hate camp. Vulfpeck do not take themselves seriously. They're not interested in looking quote-unquote cool. In fact, they're a band that's built on silliness and eccentricism. Take Jack Stratton's strange monologue during the Bridge of Darwin Derby, or the film clip of Birds of a Feather in which the drum section is played with spatulas on flapjacks. For another example, the lyrics to Animal Spirits are simply absurd. Lawrence won't do this because they're trying very hard to be cool, like those they emulate. Fair enough, you might say, being cool is great and it works for lots of bands. I don't think Lawrence are quite there. As a side note, you could say that Vulfpeck's quirkiness is their contribution to the history of soul and funk music, and that's what makes them cool, alongside the fact that they just don't give a shit. Both Vulfpeck and Lawrence are made up of proficient musicians, but only Vulfpeck's members are masters of the art form, and they're only masters because they bothered to be students. You'd never know it by the way Lawrence market themselves. Gracie Lawrence describes her brother Clyde as a genius, while others have called him things like the kid composer. He certainly had the hallmarks of a smart, precocious kid. Gracie, meanwhile, is described as a natural and lifelong performer. Now, this is all well and good. However, at some point, the individual artist has to reckon with their influences. How well they conceal those influences in their own works speaks to their mastery. Lawrence, when asked the question, say they're influenced by, surprise, surprise, Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder, Carole King, Randy Newman, Amy Winehouse and the Beatles. Is it all that surprising then that their works sound like basic facsimiles and amalgams of works by those artists? Don't Lose Sight is Amy Winehouse via Carole King, with a couple of Aretha-like belts thrown in.
So I tell myself when I sleep.
The Weather is Carole King too. Probably Up is a classic Stevie Wonder tune. Lauren's not influenced by these artists per se. They love them and have gotten really good at copying them. Vulfpeck, meanwhile, have collected and studied contributors from both the brightest and deepest corners of funk, soul, R&B, pop, and so on. The Wrecking Crew, the Funk Brothers, and the Swampers are listed among their reasons for being. There's also gospel luminary Sandra Crouch, drummer Nate Smith, Elizabeth Layer, Bernard Purdy, the Crusaders, Muscle Shoals, you name it. Knowing the names and the sounds is only half of it. Vulfpeck have ingested their influences, explored them, broken them down, built them back up. That's true mastery. See the songs Fugue State, Sky Mall, or even Back Pocket as really good examples. While reminiscent of historical sounds, none of these tracks are classic funk or soul staples. They incorporate elements of classical music, pop music, even corporate muzak. A love of experimentation is part of Vulfpeck's DNA, from songwriting to production. This brings me to the final point. Vulfpeck are interesting because they're original, and they're original because they didn't do the easy thing. You cannot say the same thing about Lawrence. Yes, What You Want is fun, loud, bombastic, and technically sound, but from a creative perspective, it isn't doing anything particularly new or difficult. It isn't driving art forward. Its first objective is to appeal. While Vulfpeck built its sound around a level distribution of instruments and ideas, making music the star, Lawrence is really just a platform designed to make Gracie and Clyde shine. The fact that Lawrence is playing it safe is fine, except for the fact that I know they could do something really interesting with their skills, presence, and resources. I think they know it too. I know as well that they read and recognise the negative comments on their videos. Playing it safe has won Lawrence certain fans, but it won't win over the so-called haters like me, because I know how safe, basic, regressive their music is. I just don't like safety. Ironically, if they did make a play for true originality, I would very likely become a bigger and more loyal fan than anyone. They certainly have the building blocks. Gracie is a genuinely good singer with a strong, recognisable tone. Not everyone can do what she can do. In summary, I'm sure this is obvious, I don't love Lawrence. I see why people do, but hate is not the right word for people like me. I love music, I love what it is and what it could be, and you really can only dislike things when you care about them. Call me a fan in waiting.
In this night, the starry sky, my baby told me with a sigh, saying words